I had to, in part, because of what my parents gave me, I had to get out from under their umbrella, under their shadow. I don't think of it as a shadow in the sense of something bad, but they gave me lots of freedom, and I think actually they really would have liked if I had gone off with them on the Endless Tour, because after this they went off to Europe. While the court case played out, they played in Europe, and the European tour, we called it the Endless Tour. It lasted 20 plus years. And I had to go off and, as they used to say, do my own thing. So I left for Oregon, I went to college, and I became part of a movement that got the unfortunate term given to it, the hippies. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And I'd like to read a very short piece from another chapter in the book, not the whole chapter, but a little piece about this, because I think anybody who was involved in countercultural things at the time suffered from this same debility on account of this same cause. So I'm going to read this little part next. Here we go. And this is from a chapter that really talks about what was going on in Portland, Oregon. Portland was the next big city up the coast from legendary Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. And we had a lot less press, and we had a lot fewer maniacal drug dealers coming to feed us God knows what. And we had a lot fewer crazed or lost runaways. Portland was the next town up from San Francisco. And as a result, it had a very, very flourishing flower power movement that did not have some of the strikes against it that San Francisco had thrown at it. So this chapter is called Something New. I'm just going to read a little part of it. Back on the West Coast, it seemed that events and people began to stream by, as though thoughts and actions rolled out of the rut and beyond the normal course of events with increasing velocity and momentum. The forces at play generated demonstrations, leading into wilderness retreats, leading into politically charged meetings, leading back into Beaver Hall and the Crystal Palace, the two rocking dance halls of Portland. The Warlocks played at these places before they became known as the Grateful Dead. On the political page, Hubert Humphrey, the good guy liberal running now for president, had sadly become the flag bearer for the Democrats' support of the Vietnam War. He came to campaign. Demonstrations filled the streets. Later, he lost the election to Richard Nixon. Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, came to town. He was the loudest spokesman in the administration's support for the Vietnam War. Demonstrations filled the streets. Later, in a no-contest plea for accepting racetrack bribes, he resigned in disgrace. We made picnics in the parks of the Portland Hills. We blew bubbles and played flutes. We wore scarves and lace and flew kites. The free clinic, Outside Inn, opened up at the edge of downtown. Koinonia House, Portland University's Christian Community Center, opened its doors to anti-draft counseling and helped shelter runaways from the war. Goose Hollow, that was the gingerbread neighborhood that was like the Haight-Ashbury. Goose Hollow flourished like a Haight-Ashbury of the North without all the hype and media bombardment. The psychedelic supermarket, our local head shop, sold small brass hookahs and showed furry flocked blacklight posters in its gallery room, already starting, little did we see it coming, to commemorate the blasted through the looking glass experience we were in the midst of having. Swami Satchidananda, the modern leader of the integral yoga movement. Yogi Bhajan, the current Grand Marshal of Kundalini Yoga. Dadaji from Ananda Marga's India ashram, all cruised into the Rose City, that's Portland, in their flowing robes and their turbans, and set up classes, lectures, ceremonies, ashrams, and initiations, all of them pointing to another way that existed outside the course of American business politics. And through these yoga practices and breathing practices and meditation practices, although these were as far from what we knew as the interstate was from the interstate, we went to these lectures. We read the texts. We started getting up early for meditations. We cut back on our dope smoking. We learned as much of the stuff as we could devour. And many of us drifted or slammed into full-time participation in these sects, adopting Hindi names, moving into the ashrams, finding in these communities maybe not the answer to how do we end human misery, but at least the answer to how can someone full of visions of peace and cooperation live in a world gone mad. Film fests showed a new breed of movie, foreign arts fair flavored with the wackiest, multi-imaged, hardly plot-driven feasts of sound, light, and color. And with all these newfound expressions of culture and idealism blossoming around us, and around similar groups of young people in 100 and more cities from Maine to San Diego, what did the press and the media have to say about it? Simple. They gave us a demeaning name. They put a name on us that was meant to make all this sound and seem childish, goofy, and unimportant. Hippies. The mainstream press found this word so very attractive because it pigeonholed all these brand new effects into an easy to minimize, easy to make fun of, easy to discount, no account, low account fashion. None of us, not in any of the enclaves of communalism, not in any of the food co-ops, not in any of the anti-war activism groups, not in any of the arts collectives, not in any of the psychedelic contingents, not in any of the widespread underground newspapers, not in any of the just starting back to the land communities, not in any of the yoga or meditative associations, not in any of the newly founded environmental groups. None of us called ourselves hippies. And none of us liked that term. We all knew it had been adopted by the mainstream media because it simplified their task so that they wouldn't have to look at what was happening with any deep seriousness. Sooner or later. Thank you. We knew we were stuck with the term. I think, for me, it was at the second of our be-ins in Portland, when people were driving in and hiking up to the top of Mount Tabor Park, asking for and looking for the hippies, that I surrendered and said, "This is us. We are the hippies you are looking for. Come join the fun." All this didn't become quite so clear to me at the time. It was just an annoyance. And it wasn't until a number of years later at one of the Rainbow Gatherings, and I want to warn you, I'm not going to read to you about Vortex. I'm not going to read to you about the Rainbow Gatherings. You're going to have to get the book, read it for yourself. But at one of the early Rainbow Gatherings, one of the Hopi elders came to the gathering and talked to us. And if you want to hear a synopsis of his whole speech, it's here in the book. But one of the things David Mononge, Grandfather David of the Hopi, said to us was, and he spoke in a kind of very old man's crackly voice, he said, "It is not by accident that the words Hopi and hippie sound alike." He went on to talk about how we were the people of peace. Now, there are 2 chapters in the book about the Hopi and the hippie, and they revolve around the Hopi blue corn, which is what led us hippies into the land of the Hopis. Now, how many of you are gardeners? Hands up, hands up. Oh, that's good. Because 45 years ago, I started growing Hopi blue corn. And so for all the gardeners, we're going to have someone, can I have a volunteer here? Oh, Janet, would you give one of these, hold on, not yet, to everybody who put their hand up who's a gardener? Now, hold on. How many of you have friends who are gardeners? Okay, everybody who has a friend who is a gardener gets one of the Hopi blue corns also. So there you go. The gardeners and the friends of gardeners, everybody gets one. So the method is this. You take this corn and you rake together in the garden something about the size of a small tire. That's called a hill or a mound. And you put 1, 2, 3, 4 corns in each of the directions, in the 4 directions. You put, and you stick your finger in as deep as it'll go. This corn likes to be planted deep. You drop it, and then you drop it in the hole and cover it up. The thing about the Hopi blue corn, when we started growing this 45, 50, 47 years ago, people said, blue corn? Corn's yellow. Now you can't walk into a deli without seeing blue corn chips and blue corn flour and blue corn muffins, and I say that's a good thing. The thing about the Hopi blue corn that's important environmentally is it is incredibly drought resistant. It will grow with next to no water. So if, in fact, the earth is getting hotter and irrigation water is getting scarcer, it may be that somewhere down the track, this easy-to-grow food may actually be useful to we human beings. Because this stuff, especially if you water it deeply at the start, will grow and produce ears of corn with very, very little water. And what you're looking for are small ears about this big. Not looking for big ears. The big ears are the divergent. You want the small ears. They're about just like what I'm showing you. And this is an open, pollinated, open heirloom material. It's not hybridized at all. This is pure, whatever it is, 8,000 years or so, the Hopi say, of growing this stuff. This corn is easy to grow. It's provident. You can make blue corn, grind it up roughly or pound it up and make blue corn porridge, or you can just eat the ears right as they come off the vine, nice and sweet, or you can make flour and blue corn tortillas and chips, and hopefully it doesn't become a terrible survival crop for a devastated future. But I have been passing this out in Tajikistan, in Hungary, in Australia, in Brazil, all over the world, and I think it is something that if we share with each other and grow with each other, it's a little like a little security in the back pocket in case agriculture and water get more desperate as we move into the century ahead. I know that's so encouraging for an optimist, but there you go.